the depths of a mysterious prison, a retired jail superintendent revealed a spine-chilling tale of a paranormal encounter. Locked away in secrecy, the name of this haunted penitentiary remains whispered in hushed tones. Amidst the daily operations, there was a skeptical investigating officer, oblivious to the existence of the supernatural. Boastfully dismissing the notion of ghosts, he proudly declared, "Such claims are preposterous. As an officer who confronts lifeless bodies, I've never laid eyes upon a ghost." Undeterred, the prison guards persisted in narrating their eerie experiences to the disbelieving officer. Then, one fateful day, the investigating officer returned, summoned to interrogate 3 condemned prisoners awaiting their execution. Arriving late in the twilight hours, he was met with strict regulations prohibiting his entry. Nevertheless, familiarity with the prison's workings granted him access. Stepping into a designated room, the officer commenced his interviews, commencing with the male inmates. As he concluded with the men, the time came for him to face the female prisoner, the final piece of this enigmatic puzzle. As the female prisoner entered the room, she took a seat in front of the investigating officer, her head bowed and her gaze fixed on the floor. The officer began his questioning, hoping to gather some valuable information. However, to his surprise, the prisoner responded by saying that it was a beautiful day. Despite the officer's confusion, the prisoner's head remained lowered, making it difficult for him to gauge her true intentions. With each subsequent question, the prisoner stubbornly refused to cooperate, providing only brief answers. Her head remained bowed, as if she was hiding something. After 10 minutes of fruitless questioning, the female prisoner requested permission to use the restroom, which was conveniently located in the same room. Meanwhile, the officer continued to sift through the reports he had obtained from the other prisoners, but the female prisoner's report remained incomplete. Just 2 minutes later, she returned to her seat, her head still lowered, her hair cascading over her cheeks. The officer, growing frustrated, raised his voice and demanded that she answer his previous question and look at him instead of the floor. Slowly, the female prisoner lifted her face, revealing a stunningly beautiful visage that took the officer by surprise. Her eyes sparkled, her skin was flawless and fair, and when she smiled, her teeth gleamed white and pristine. However, there was something peculiar about her smile, as if she was concealing a secret. Her piercing gaze locked onto the investigating officer, refusing to answer any further questions. In a chilling and horrifying turn of events, a sinister smile dances across her face as she lets out a bone-chilling laugh. In an instant, the female prisoner's head violently bursts, sending a gruesome spray of blood in all directions. The shocking sight leaves everyone present in a state of shock and disbelief. With a macabre twist, the disembodied head is swiftly severed from the lifeless body and rolls eerily towards the investigating officer, who is now trembling with fear and anxiety. Without wasting a single moment, the investigating officer hastily exits the room, desperately seeking refuge and solace from the perplexing and terrifying sight that just unfolded. He rushes towards a waiting warden, who is taken aback by the officer's trembling and distressed demeanor. Confusion fills the air as the warden inquires about the reason behind the officer's obvious distress. Upon hearing the officer's explanation, the warden is astounded by the unusual and unexplainable circumstances that unfolded before them. As the warden comprehends the situation, it becomes clear to him that according to his knowledge, only the investigating officer was present in the room during the incident. All the prisoners had been securely returned to their respective cells, including the female prisoner in question. With a puzzled expression, the warden explains that after the female prisoner had briefly left the room to use the restroom, she was promptly escorted back to her cell by the prison staff. A wave of bewilderment washes over the investigating officer as he realizes the enigma that lies before him. If the woman who had been interviewed after returning from the toilet was not the same female prisoner, then who was she? Uncertainty hangs in the air as both the officer and the warden grapple with the inexplicable nature of this mystery. In the wake of this horrifying encounter, the investigating officer's bravado crumbles, replaced by a newfound belief in the existence of ethereal beings that may wander within the confines of the prison walls. The The question remains unanswered. Who is the woman whose head was torn so grotesquely from her body? In reality, numerous prisoners and prison guards were filled with fear whenever they encountered this woman. The story I heard unveiled a shocking truth about her past. She was once a part of a notorious gangster organization and was caught in the middle of a fierce ambush at the police station. It was a high-stakes operation, with the police managing to seize drugs worth a staggering $1 million from the gangsters. However, the gangsters were not ones to back down easily. They devised a plan to launch a daring attack on the police station, desperate to reclaim their precious drugs. Even though some of the gangsters eventually surrendered, there were still remnants of the organization who refused to give up. These relentless members launched a relentless assault on the police station, determined to seize back what they believed was rightfully theirs. Tragically, amidst the chaos, 12 of her male companions met a fatal end, succumbing to the bullets fired by the police. In the midst of the chaos, she found herself being apprehended and taken into custody, her fate sealed within the confines of the very same facility she once sought to conquer. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, this female gangster member found herself locked away, confined within the walls of her prison cell. The weight of her actions and the consequences of her choices began to sink in. Eventually, the justice system delivered its verdict. She was sentenced to death by hanging. However, the execution did not go smoothly, as the gallows used were of poor quality. As the rope tightened around her neck, it gruesomely severed her head from her body. Since that fateful day, both prisoners and wardens have frequently encountered the presence of this woman, particularly around the area where she was hanged. Some claim to have witnessed her walking without a head or even holding her severed head in her hands. At times, her decapitated head has been seen rolling on the floor. It appears that her spirit remains restless, wandering the prison and disturbing its inhabitants. Another spine-chilling incident occurred when I first began working at another prison. The night was eerily quiet within the prison walls, and darkness enveloped the surroundings. Only the faint glow from the prison blocks and the dividing wall provided some illumination. Peering out from my room, I noticed that it was still drizzling outside. The sound of rainwater falling on the zinc roof added to the unsettling atmosphere. As a trainee prison officer with just 2 weeks of experience, I glanced at the clock in my hand. It read 3 AM. It was time for my hourly patrol around the women's detention block. Equipped with a flashlight, I mustered up the courage to begin my rounds. However, after taking just a few steps, an unexplainable fear gripped me. I couldn't understand why, but my mind was flooded with the horrifying stories that the senior staff had shared about the prison. In that particular area, a group of seniors stumbled upon a truly spine-chilling scene. They were taken aback when they witnessed eerie figures shrouded in white fabric, drifting aimlessly through the air. Adding to the unsettling atmosphere, they also spotted peculiar round objects, mysteriously rolling around the vicinity of the prison. These hair-raising encounters occurred during their solitary night patrols, leaving an indelible mark on their memories. However, if you happen to recall those bone-chilling moments, the fear becomes even more palpable, sending shivers down your spine. The rhythm of my footsteps quickened as I tried to keep up with the pace. Just a few meters ahead, a wave of unease washed over me, causing my heart to pound in my chest. A chill ran down my spine, causing my hair to stand on end. It was then that I remembered the chilling fact that in this very area, a morgue housed the remains of prisoners who had met their demise either through hanging or while in custody. This was the same area where my colleagues had encountered the eerie presence of a mysterious organization. Despite the fear gripping my heart, I mustered the strength to continue walking. Duty called, and I had a responsibility to fulfill. As I patrolled the area, my eyes caught sight of a signboard, about 20 meters away from me. Curiosity mingled with apprehension as I whispered to myself, "Who could that be?" My gaze fixed upon 3 figures that emerged before me. 2 men dressed as prisoners and a warden in his full uniform pushing a stretcher. Covered in a white cloth, a lifeless body lay upon it. Questions flooded my mind, wondering which prisoner had met their demise. The trio continued to push the stretcher towards a waiting hearse, its engine humming softly in the nearby garage. Strangely, as they handled the body, no words were exchanged, and an eerie silence enveloped the surroundings. Moreover, it struck me as odd that typically, funeral arrangements for deceased prisoners were conducted after dawn. So why was this happening so early in the morning? Thoughts raced through my mind as I continued to observe the unfolding scene. The three men reached the van, and with a swift motion, the back bonnet was opened. The lifeless body was gently pushed inside. It was at this moment that something inexplicable occurred, leaving me bewildered. The van stood before me, its doors wide open, revealing an empty interior. The three men who had been pushing the stretcher just moments ago had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. It was as if they were mere apparitions, transparent shadows that had melted away into the darkness. My heart whispered to me, assuring me that what I had witnessed was real, even as I rubbed my eyes in disbelief. Confusion clouded my mind, and my pulse quickened as I cautiously approached the van. As I drew closer, the engine, which had been humming steadily, abruptly fell silent. The sudden stillness hung in the air, enveloping me in an eerie quietness. I reached out to touch the bonnet of the engine, only to be met with a chilling coldness. There was no sign of the engine being turned on, yet it had been running just moments ago. I peered into the van, expecting to find answers, but it was empty. Not a single soul occupied the space, and even the body covered in a white cloth had vanished. Who were those men? In that moment, my mind could only conjure one explanation: ghosts. The following day, I shared my bewildering experience with my seniors and friends. Some laughed it off, dismissing it as nonsense, while others believed my account. Yet, not everyone was open to the idea of these ethereal beings. Some could see them, while others remained oblivious. For me, it was clear that these subtle creatures existed, revealing themselves to those they chose. The two stories I had shared only solidified my belief in their existence. We appreciate your viewership and hope you enjoyed today's video. To stay updated with similar content, we encourage you to subscribe and activate the notification bell. If you have any personal experiences related to the video, we would love to hear from you. Join us on this thrilling journey as we delve into the world of horror stories.